Welcome back to the Master Your Money podcast with me, Marini Jackson, your guide to mastering credit, building wealth, and creating financial freedom. Let's dive into today's episode. So, today I wanted to share another special episode, and the honor of the occasion is that my first manager for my current employer retired. She retired from working with this company after being there for 40 years. Now, 40 years is a generation, and that's a long time. So she had seen a lot in her time during um, her tenure with the company. And the thing I can say, being that I attended her retirement party, was that she and everyone in the room had huge smiles on their faces. So, from Sheila's retirement party, I had some valuable takeaways. I believe that there's always at least one thing we can learn from most experiences that we go through in life, and I learned quite a little bit. So, I'll just first give a little bit of backstory on how I came to know Sheila, and then just share some lessons that I learned or just some things I heard from others at her party, at her retirement party. So, Sheila, she hired me to work for my current employer. And that for me was at a time when I didn't have a degree in finance. She, for most of her career, a good bit of her career, worked in finance, accounting or finance, and then I forgot the last title she had before she left. But so I feel, she took a chance on me, took a chance on some others who were later became my colleagues, and even someone at the retirement party also said she hired me to work, or she hired me to work for this company. So, and everyone just started laughing because what I knew of Sheila is she was a really great manager. She, like most people, had people who she was closer with and others she may not have been as close with, but she treated everyone with respect, which I tremendously appreciated. And for my current employer, I would say she was one of the best managers that I had. I actually have had great management, so I am very blessed where I've had great relationships with my great uh, professional relationships with my management. And Sheila, she, during her party, she had some items from her time at the company. She had a manual from one of the payment systems, which thank goodness our company finally decommissioned that program because it was very old. She had a calculator which had the paper, I don't know, some people call it register tape, on it. And some of the younger people in the room really didn't know what that was. And I think it was maybe one or two other items when I walked into the room where her party was being held, and I didn't know where to sit. So, like, someone's like, oh, well, the table or the seat's free. And that's how I got to, basically, give Sheila a hug and have a seat, eat, and be there while she was roasted. One thing about Sheila, and this is the first lesson that I learned, is that she was great with money, which is why she was in accounting for most of her time with that employer. And one thing that people knew her for was her sticking to a budget. One thing I didn't mention is that her sister also sat at the table where I was sitting, and as those who organized the party began to speak, her sister was saying, "Yeah, Sheila's always been great with the budget. She's really good at those numbers. She can make those numbers work. She is great at a budget." That's one lesson I learned. Lesson number 2 was her car. And she still has the same car that she had when I started working with her back in 2006. So 20 years ago. She has the same car that she had 20 years ago. And when everyone started talking about her car, she mentioned that people would put a note on her car telling her to get a new car. She was in management, so she made more than an individual contributor, and in the minds of others she had more than enough money where she can afford to purchase a car, a new car I should say. And Sheila's response to what people said then, she said they would leave notes on her car, and if her car were broke down, which sometimes it did, on the way to work, and she'd unfortunately have to be late due to the car having to be towed or things of that nature, she said, my car works just like everybody else's car. It gets me from point A to point B. It has 4 wheels, has a good engine, and I'm going to keep driving it. So some people may not have that mentality about their vehicles, their finances, but for me, one thing I didn't mention, she retired at the age of, I think, 62, and her birthday was literally the very next day after her retirement party, which was pretty cool. But no, it was later that week, but the day after she retired was her birthday. So that was her, of course, present to herself, is retiring. But the thing I took away from that is sometimes with our finances, we cannot be so caught up in opinions of others on what they feel we should do. They may try to guilt us into it or shame us into it. If you're single, I definitely don't recommend, having a car that's not reliable and breaking down on you, especially as a single woman. But for Sheila, she found a way. Like, her sister works for the employer. Her husband used to work for the employer, and I'm pretty sure she found a way to make sure she got to work. But long story short, if there's something financially that other people may feel that you need to replace because they feel that you need a new car, but you have other financial goals and priorities, listen to your finances and your financial situation rather than the opinions of others. Because yes, the opinions of others, they can be helpful suggestions, hints, things of that nature, but ultimately your personal budget better than they do. One example I can give from my personal life is when I began working for Sheila with the company, I was a contractor, meaning that any rights that the employees had, meaning like health benefits, things like that, as a contractor, I did not have that. When I became what's called direct employee, directly working for that employer, then I got all of the health insurance and benefits, things of that nature. And at that point, when I became a permanent or direct employee, I did purchase my home. And I remember people would tell me, like, oh, you should get a dog. You should get this. You should do that. You should paint your house like this. You should buy this type of furniture. And in my mind, I was respectful, but in my mind, I'm like, are you going to pay for this? Because my name is on the mortgage, not yours. You may make this suggestion, want me to buy a dog and all these different things. And that's extra money that at that time, it wasn't in my budget. I wanted a home more than I wanted a dog. So yes, opinions of others, they may be very loving, but ultimately at the end of the day, you are responsible for your finances. Another lesson that I learned is that Sheila was, and I already knew this, but Sheila was a giver. She was very generous and kind with her time. She not only worked, but she mentored others in the company, but also she is very athletic. So she was a sports coach to youth, I think she said 6 through 8. And one of the ladies in the room, she's like, yes, Sheila coached my son in basketball. And just the joy that she had, that everything wasn't all about the money, it wasn't all about career, but she had a balance to her life where she not only worked in her profession, but also she gave back to others and she had joy in doing it, was a big lesson for me. Another lesson that I learned, and I'll make this the final one, is that Sheila, she planned, because she, like I said, she retired at 62 rather than 65, 67, or age 70. A lot of people, some people unfortunately don't have that privilege to retire from a job because they have maybe mounting medical bills, they have other financial obligations that take precedence over them being able to retire. So what Sheila is on to next, she actually started helping with an organization prior to setting her retirement date. And just from listening to her speak about the organization, it sounds like she may have been doing this, for maybe a few years prior to deciding to retire. So I appreciate that she was a planner. She was great with her budget. She didn't let other people's opinions stop her. And this goes on with being charitable, but essentially, she is going to be doing more work with an organization that helps the families of those who are incarcerated. A lot of focus is on the incarcerated person, but the needs of their families may be neglected. So I thought it was worthwhile work. She actually had the link ready if anyone wanted to learn more about it, or also to basically be a financial sponsor to the work of the organization. So just for her having a solid plan, and she said she would still do things like the fishing and walking, which she did during her working years prior to retirement. So, like I said, I learned some great lessons, great money lessons, very encouraging. To find someone who was, very last thing, what really stood out to me about Sheila as well is she said, she had some only one challenging manager while she was there during her 40-year tenure, and that just made her learn to just really be, kind, always try to do her best. And she said the reason she was able to endure and sustain and have a positive attitude while working was because of her faith as a Christian. And she said that helped her. And even with that difficult boss, it just made her, it made her more sharp. Not sharp as in mean, but sharp as in, am I providing the work that my management needs? It helped her with making sure she had that positive attitude and professionalism. She said it made her pray a lot more as well, which is never a bad thing. But just knowing that she credited her success in the workplace to her relationship with Jesus Christ was phenomenal. And it was a room full of people who were obviously positively impacted by her life and her leadership. So I hope that if you are in the workplace, or even if you're a business owner, that when you decide I'm not going to continue in this particular phase of my life, that the same can be said of you, that someone can speak well of you, that you, whether you're knowingly or unknowingly, you're leaving a positive impact and legacy on others, and that when you leave, you can always leave with a smile on your face. So if this episode has helped you, I know this is my second episode that's a bit different. I should say just something real life for me that's recently occurred that I hope it resonated with you. But I just wanted again to tell you thank you for tuning in to the Master Your Money podcast. And if today's episode helped you, be sure that you subscribe so you never miss a new lesson on mastering your money. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. So leave those in the comments below for me, and I'll read through those as well. And feel free also to share this podcast with a friend, family member, loved one who you know is ready to build their financial freedom too. And if you're ready to take the next step, you can head on over to my website, www.virtuefinancialsolutions.org, and you can learn more about my coaching programs, upcoming workshops, and resources to help you on your financial journey. So until next time, remember, you don't just manage your money, you master it.